back and we look, and they clearly told us to see Ovid. Well, when you look in the story of Ovid, there's a story about Pan. All right. And not only that, there's a story about a pandemic, which like puts all this stuff off. So basically, when we look at the Pan archetype, we could see a lot of these different things going on with it. And one of the big stories about Pan is back in ancient Greece, and this is actually recorded. It's used kind of as mythology, but it's also recorded as historical fact. There's a story of, and I forget which, I can look and see in my notes here in just a second here, but one of the popular philosophers of the time, let me see, let me scroll through. I don't want to tie you up for too long. So much information going through my mind.
So just while you're looking at that, so Ovid was was known as it is known in English as Ovid, was a Roman poet who lived during the reign of Augustus. He was a contemporary of the older Virgil and Horace. Horace is a name that jumps out there.
Right. Yeah. So that's the other thing. I mean, when you actually look back at these poets and stuff like that, these classical poets, these are the playbooks that the elite use for planning things. These are the archetypes that they invoke. This is why they use mythology, and they tell you where it's coming from. That's why they told us, see Ovid. So when you go to Ovid in Metamorphosis, you see not only did he have a story about Pan, but of the pandemic, of a pandemic actually happening. And this happened, in, I forget what the specific book of Ovid was, because there's 15 different books in Ovid, if I'm not mistaken. It's split up. It's like, it's tremendous. There's so much in Ovid, and it hits on over 250 different myths, and there's a lot of archetypes. That's why they use it as a playbook. So when you see that they're telling you see Ovid, and you look in Ovid and you find Pan, and it's associated with a pandemic, you start to look around and wonder, okay, what is it about Pan that's being invoked here? So we go back to a story of Pan that's actually told by Plutarch. Now, this is the one that's important here. Plutarch tells the tale of there was a ship captain named Themis, all right? And he was sailing around the Isle of Paxi. He was on his way back to Greece around Paxi, and he heard a voice yell out from the ocean, okay? From out, like a disembodied voice from the ocean, call his name. And he thought he was hearing things, right? But here's the kicker. Everybody on the boat heard it too, heard the voice calling his name. So the voice called his name a second time, and he answered, all right? And the voice told him the great god Pan is dead. And it told him that when he gets offshore, that he needed to announce this to the island. So he didn't know at that point the rest of the ship had heard this too. So he thought to himself, okay, well, maybe I'm going crazy. So here's what I'll do. I'll leave it in the hands of the fates. When I get close to the shore, if the weather's bad, I'll just sail on and say nothing about it. But if the weather's clear, I'll announce that when we get close enough to shore. So what happens is he sails close to shore, and when he gets close to shore, the weather's good. So he's like, okay, I'm not going nuts. So he loudly announces to all the people, the great Pan is dead. And there was lamenting and stuff like that all across the island. And everybody was saddened by it because they knew that Pan was dead. The god Pan was dead. And this is very symbolic, okay? And we'll get to the reasons why. And I go over this in the book because it's kind of lengthy to talk about in a conversation. But the whole point behind this was this parody between Pan and Christ, because this happened actually in the lifetime of Christ.
That's what I'm saying. So, there was a cult of Pan at the same time Christ was alive.
Right. There were these cults of Pan, and this is what happened. They announced Pan was dead. Okay. So this created a rift in a lot of the different mystery theologies and stuff like that at the time. But later on, what had happened is the Christian mystics and different Christian theologians, they understood that the announcement of the great god Pan is dead meant that it was the new age, the start of the new age, the birth of Christ. See, that the new Messiah had come. This was the age of a new God. So this is what this portends. So the death of Pan during the lifetime of Christ announced, hey, the new Messiah is here.
Right.
Okay. This is the new religion for the ages. So it created this kind of parity, this connection between Pan and Christ. And the other interesting thing is the name of the captain who announced this, his name was Thamus, which if you look back to the etymology of that, it means twin, which invokes the idea of twin. So Pan and Christ, twin towers, twin pillars that this is built upon. So what this creates is what I call the Pan-Christ dynamic. Okay, I don't know a better name for it. I had to come up with terms for this myself to try to convey the idea. And what this is this is a time period, a time frame of the switching over between ages. And that's exactly what was going on, because this was during the lifetime of Christ and the death of Pan, and they overlapped, and this was the birth pangs of a new age. And it's the same thing we're going through here. So we're seeing the reversal, the inverse of this Pan-Christ dynamic going on. So they're trying to do away with Christ as God and replace it with, well, this will be in total inversion of what Pan is, which is actually a representation called Baphomet, which you touched upon interestingly in the beginning.
Yeah.
So
well,
this
they're
is
the
what's going
same.
on. They're doing it in
very
reverse.
similar, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, they go
so they're
half goat, half man. So I mean,
it's
the connection is quite obvious.
Yes, it's the inversion. See, because when you look at Baphomet, he has the head of a goat, whereas Pan had the head of a man and the lower half of a goat.
Oh.
It's an inversion process. See, and this is how these things work alchemically. So they're trying to work the reverse into the age. They're trying to shift us backwards, so to say,